I'm really honored to be here today moderating this panel with a group of very distinguished panelists, Egypt Journey, Financial Inclusion. At the onset, let me share a little secret. More than 25 years ago, I graduated from the American University in Cairo, majoring in economics. And I worked in a bank in Abu Dhabi for some months. And then I got to know firsthand what a tough life you lead in the finance world. So I switched career and instead became a war correspondent reporting from conflict areas because it's less tough. An estimated 2 billion people in the world still lack access to sustainable financial services, saving, credit, insurance. Addressing the constraints that exclude people from full participation in the financial sector remains a huge challenge. Egypt has taken solid steps towards building an inclusive financial sector that helps improve the lives of the marginalized, in the belief that this would lead to sustainable economic growth and development, poverty alleviation, and hence stability. Considering financial inclusion a strategic objective to be pursued alongside realizing price stability and ensuring the soundness of the banking system, the Central Bank of Egypt has brought financial inclusion to the forefront of the development policy agenda. A number of measures have been introduced that provide the financially underserved, households and businesses with opportunities to be part of the formal financial system. The fact that the 9th AFI Global Policy Forum is being held here in Egypt, and the fact that President Sisi was with us today bears testament to the high-level commitment and political will to move ahead with financial inclusion. Empowering the Ghedas and Afefs of this country will mean empowering the entire society. To learn more about what has been achieved so far, the challenges and the way forward, I'm delighted to welcome this group of very distinguished panelists. Her Excellency, Minister Gheda Wali, Minister of Social Solidarity, Mrs. Lobna Hlel, Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Egypt, and just elected Vice Chair of the Women and Gender Committee of AFI. Mrs. Mona Zolfoar, Chairperson of the Egyptian Microfinance Federation, and Mr. Dante Campioni, he is Managing Director and CEO at the Bank of Alexandria. Welcome, everyone. And my first question is to you, Mrs. Hillel. Egypt has been chosen along with China and Mexico by the World Bank Group to be their operational country in its Financial Inclusion Global Initiative. It's an initiative that will harness the potential of digital technologies for financial inclusion. Why Egypt and why now? Can you tell us what has been achieved so far?
Sure. Thank you, Shaira, for the introduction. I think that the choice of Egypt alongside Mexico and China by the World Bank for the Global Financial Inclusion Initiative for accelerating digital financial inclusion is really a testimony to the efforts that were done by the central bank in that realm. The criteria for choosing these countries is really four main criteria. One is the potential that can be realized by accelerating digital financial inclusion. The second is the authorities' commitment to the cause of digital financial inclusion. And then the financial market infrastructure that is available in the country and the regulatory framework that regulates these activities. If I take all of these 4 points, I'll be able to answer your question of what was delivered or what is in the process of being delivered in Egypt. I just want to step back and saying also that this is a 3-year program where Egypt, the Central Bank of Egypt, will be offered technical assistance, funding, as well as knowledge transfer from the network of the World Bank and the ITU, and also funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Bill and Gates Foundation. In terms of potential, according to the numbers by the World Bank, the outreach that we can realize by digital financial inclusion will bring into the formal sector more than 40 million Egyptians. So the potential is quite large, and that's why Egypt was chosen. And this is actually not strange, because we do have a mobile penetration of more than 112%. We have 50% that have smartphones, and 33 million citizens that access internet through the mobile. So that's why the potential is also great if we can regulate this. The second, which is the political commitment and the political will. And I think today, throughout the sessions and by the introduction done by Mr. Governor and also Mai now in her presentation, the National Payment Council is also the establishment of this council, being presided by the President, is also giving this political will and commitment, and also creating a body where you can coordinate all the efforts of the stakeholders so that you can have a high impact, because the mandate of this council is to have a cashless society and to bring in the informal sector into the formal sector. The third criteria is really the financial infrastructure, and that's where the central bank has been starting its effort since 2009, first with the RTGS, followed by the automated clearing house for retail payments, and also an interoperable clearing house for the more than 10,000 ATMs that we have in Egypt. And the latest was the mobile interoperability that was just launched a couple of months ago. So that's on the infrastructure. Last but not least is also the regulatory framework. And on that front, the central bank was also leading in that respect by looking into the regulations, especially mobile payment regulations. We have first mobile banking that was launched in 2014, and today more than 75% of our banks are availing internet banking services. And the second also major milestone there is the tiered KYC that was done in collaboration with the Money Laundering Combating Unit according to international standards, to allow for banking agents and allow for a more simplified KYC when it comes to mobile payments. So those 4 elements were the basis for the choice, and also are setting the framework for the central bank going forward in that respect.
Wonderful. Excellency, Minister Redaweli, 44 million citizens can be brought into the formal financial sector. That's a very ambitious target. Is it achievable, and how?
Thank you, Shahira. I think from what we have seen today, it's definitely achievable to make leap, jumps in joining and including Egyptians into the formal financial sector for a number of reasons, and some of them were mentioned today. One of them is that we are at a low level of participation in the formal financial sector. My colleague this morning, Dr. Hala, explained the steps that the government has taken into formalization, so I will not repeat them, but I can add to you what we are doing with the poorest women in rural areas in Egypt, in remote areas, and in sectors that were not seen or visible to government. We have been able in 2 years to use technology to include women in a conditional cash transfer program. The conditional cash transfer program, which was mentioned this morning by the President and the Prime Minister, is a program that has allowed 1.7 million women to be registered, bankerized. They all have smart cards. They do get their payments monthly through smart cards. They go to the post office, to 4,000 post office outlets, and they do get their payments every month. The fact that they have been able to use those smart cards, they have been seen by government, was prepared for by issuance of IDs. Many of these women did not have the ID, so IDs allowed mobility. IDs allowed also women access to a number of services, such as access to finance, such as access to a savings account in the post office, and access to conditional cash transfer. Yes, it is achievable because you have seen the political commitment. We have been working on the infrastructure, on availing internet. We have used 17,000 researchers to go around the villages looking for women using tablets to register all the data, and the government was able to build a database of these women, and not just the women, but the whole families. We have on our databases 3 million families that are poor, that are not served by the formal financial sector. We have for each and every person in this database identified by his ID, a whole set of data, and the analysis of this data allows us to know a lot about the base of the pyramid. We have heard this morning's talk about the base of the pyramid and the importance of knowing the patterns of consumption and the needs of the clients. Those we know in our database. We're linking this database to 32 other databases in government in different ministries. We're upgrading and updating the information continuously so that we have enough information on the potential clients and the underserved. The infrastructure in terms of internet, in terms of post offices upgrading, in terms of 2,700 social units that are outlets to be used to reach for those clients is also there and is constantly being upgraded. We are a very young nation with 65% less than 35-year-olds. So I do believe that reaching those numbers is doable, and that it's a win-win for everybody. Whenever there's a win-win, I think there's a political will, and the infrastructure, and the regulatory framework, and the interventions led by the central bank. I think we can do it, and we can do it easily.
And the technology, using technology to empower women.
Yes, we have used technology for the first time, and this made a big difference. In 35 years, Egypt reached 1.5 million households with cash transfers. In 2 years, using 17,000 tablets, using internet, going around the villages and registering people inside their homes allowed us to reach, in 2 years, only 1.75 million. So this is times 5. This is a very large number of people to be reached. And the smart cards allow us to really disperse the money, stop the cards, transparency, reduces leakage, security. So there's a lot of benefits of technology. Maybe we can detail them further.
Yes, I'd like you to tell us more about Takaful and Karama in just a minute. But first, Mona Zulfuqar, despite a sizable segment of the population being without access to any form of traditional banking or financial services, 112% of Egyptians have a mobile phone, creating a huge potential for mobile payment services. Can mobile payment help fuel growth of the microfinance industry by bringing more unbanked people into the formal financial sector?
Yeah, this is a very important question because we asked the Central Bank of Egypt to allow the microfinance institutes to disburse their loans and collect repayments through mobile banking. And the Central Bank of Egypt responded positively to our request. Why did we do that? First of all, learning by experience from all the other countries of the world. Second, we have a very ambitious plan. In Egypt, since November 2014, we had for the first time a microfinance law. Finally, after 20 years of carrying out microfinance without any rules or regulations, we have a regulatory environment that empowers microfinance institutions to carry out this activity in accordance with best international practice and based on financial sustainability. So we are now able to target the poor, the marginalized, and the illiterate on a financially sustainable basis. And this really created a very important shift. As a result of this law and all the regulations that were passed, we now have 785 licensed microfinance institutions by the Egyptian Financial Supervisory Authority, EFSA. They are licensed and they are subject to regulations, and they are accountable for compliance, for institutional efficiency, for providing quality products, for financial sustainability, and for protecting the rights of their customers. Now, we target the poor and the marginalized. Those are our targeted groups of customers. So poverty statistics are very important for us. We calculated what is our target, the target group, what are the needs that we have to meet. And we found that the needs, the potential needs that are required to satisfy the market, the microfinance needs, is to provide microfinance to 10 million active borrowers at more than 30 billion pounds, which means the average is 3,000 pounds. It's like $150. It's it looks very challenging. But where are we now? Now, we, the microfinance institutes, the 785 MFIs, 782 NGOs, and 3 private sector companies, in addition to a number of banks that are providing direct microfinance to clients, are providing microfinance of 7.8 billion Egyptian pounds to 2.2 million borrowers. We have a serious gap to meet, unmet needs, potential market for microfinance in our targeted groups are not receiving the service they deserve. And so how do? We planned, we put a plan, and we decided that we have to reach 10 million active borrowers within 6 years. As for the gap between 7.8 billion pounds and 30 billion, the banks will provide funding for this gap. Why am I so sure that the banks will provide the funding to the microfinance institutions? For 2 reasons. First, because the microfinance institutions are good businesses. They are financially and commercially sustainable, so they are good borrowers. Second, which is also very important, is that the central bank, in response to our request for support to get the funding to be able to meet the needs, has given incentives to the banks. First, they gave them permission, authorization to finance us, the microfinance institutions, the NGOs and the private sector, according to a credit scoring system that is fit to our conditions. The second is that, as you heard, they will give them credit against their minimum obligation to reach 20% of their portfolio by 2020 for SMEs. And now, if they lend us, the MFIs, they will get credit for it as far as the central bank is concerned. So we started seeing funding coming from the banks, and we're not worried about the funding gap. But how do we handle the outreach? How do we jump from 2.2 million borrowers to 10 million borrowers? It's a huge jump. Mobile banking. We thought that the way to do it is mobile banking. Our customers cannot deal with banks. They are not equipped to deal with the complexity and the bureaucracy. And the banks also do not have the resources to deal with our targeted groups, the poor, the illiterate, and the marginalized. But this does not apply to us. They deal with us. And they all, amazingly enough, have mobiles. With the penetration rate, half of them have smartphones. And so when the Central Bank of Egypt put in effect the mobile payment rules last May, we started working with the central bank in coordinating all the efforts between the regulatory authorities, EFSA, NATRA, which is the National Telecom Regulatory Authority, the Federation, which represents the microfinance industry, and the stakeholders, the companies, the NGOs, and the banks. And we all are working in a working group to make sure that the mobile payment structure is, in fact, efficiently implemented. Now, mobile banking is going to cut on cost of transportation for our customers. It's going to cut on time spent. It's going to create a lot of savings. On top of that, it is going to facilitate financial education and financial literacy programs because they are part and parcel of implementing the mobile payment program. The last thing I want to say is that not only the Central Bank of Egypt in mobile payment just authorized us to use it for disbursement and repayments, they allowed the NGOs and the companies, large size, having a portfolio over 50 million pounds, to act as agents for the banks in performing a simplified KYC for the microfinance customers, and therefore open a mobile account for them without such customers having to go to the banks or deal directly with the banks, which we thought was an innovative simplifying procedure that would help us include all our customers into the mobile banking accounts without any difficulty. And we think that this same model can be used for other financial services. So we are really enthusiastic about mobile banking and think that it will empower us to accelerate our program to reach 10 million active borrowers, not within 6 years, but maybe less than that. The last little comment is...
But maybe the women have to be made aware that they have this tool in hand.
Yes, of course, they will be. That's part of the financial literacy and the digital literacy and generally the education. The last thing I want to say is that mobile banking will help curb the resistance of Egyptians to, put their cash in banks. Egyptians like to keep their cash like the Philippine, what we heard this morning, to keep their cash securely hidden at home, under the mattress, or as we say, under a floor tile. And they keep it there, and they don't like to put the cash in the banks or in the post office. Mobile banking is going to encourage them to get over this deeply ingrained tradition and accept to change for the purpose of enhancing financial inclusion.
It may change the culture. Let's see what Mr. Campioni has to say about this. Mr. Campioni, what role has the banking sector got in financial inclusion? And how are banks responding to the emerging trends? We know that the Alexandria Bank started as just a bank and has evolved into a fully fledged financial institution, providing a host of financial services. Tell us more.
Thanks. Let me take just the last part of your question briefly about Alex Bank. Just to say that I think Alex Bank is taking also advantage of a peculiar situation. I think is an example of successful privatization. We come for being a public sector bank, so with a network well spread all across the Egyptian governorates. We still have in our board the contribution of the Ministry of Finance. So we are definitely in a position to, let's say, add on the historic pertaining to the public sector, the experience on international group. So we are bringing to Egypt the expertise, the experience that our group has matured in other countries. But I agree totally with the comments of this morning, the Vice President of Visa. There are no general solutions, but there are always local solutions to be developed. So what we are doing here in Egypt is something peculiar that is developed at Alex Bank that can take experience of other countries, but come out that the solution that we found here then are even exported. So I agree totally with the comment that was done this morning with from the Vice President of Visa. The financial sector is, I would say that the number can confirm this, is very active because all the banking aggregates are growing a lot in the last few years. The market is in great expansion. There is a high liquidity in the Egyptian pound, so it's clear that the loan-to-deposit ratio is very low. There is a huge room to grow in terms of lending. The indication is that, of course, in order to achieve sustainable growth, also the concentration of the risks has to decrease. So from here, the strong push to lend to the SME sector. As was mentioned before, the central bank has even introduced specific KPIs on this, the famous 20%. The authority have launched a series of initiatives to subsidize even lending for SMEs, and definitely this increase the potential size of the market. So banks are perceiving this as a real opportunity to address their growth and to address in a very sustainable manner. We, as Alex Bank, but I would say all the major Egyptian banks have taken a universal approach, so are active all across the spectrum of the segment of the customers, from the microfinance till the large corporate. I agree that there is a strong cooperation with NGOs also in the microfinance. Definitely the fact that a clear regulation, a specific law was approved a few years ago has given a lot of room and certainties also for banks to participate. There are banks that are active, directly active in this market. We are one of these. So besides supporting and cooperating with NGOs, banks are also providing direct lending in the microfinance sector. Definitely, technology can help all. I would say I totally agree with the minister about the win-win situation. Here, the market is huge. We are talking about potential markets, potential numbers that no single player can cover. So it's very easy to cooperate with NGOs, it's very easy to cooperate with authorities, it's very easy to cooperate amongst banks. I would say that we are all committed to take this challenge. We are all committed in investing because the market is promising, and we invest in many directions, personnel, technology, because as I said, new technology and the growing importance of the digital financial services is something on which really we pay a lot of attention.
There's clearly a readiness on the part of banks to go digital. IT security may be a concern. What are some of the measures to enhance IT security?
I would say that yes, definitely security is very important, and it was also told in the previous panel how it's important to secure and to make also customer feel secure about this. I would say that here there is, first of all, clear regulation. The monetary authority are paying a lot of attention, setting standards, and I would say that they have two sorts of concern. One is the continuity of the service. So we are developing also technology and infrastructure that can, let's say, also support the business even in case of some technical problems, to give continuity in the services. And of course, the problem is penetration to our system with all the problem that we understand, we read even recently, have a global dimension. But I would say that, first of all, technology, the state-of-the-art technology is available also in Egypt. There are also professional skills. So I would say that there is a lot of attention. There are a lot of investments in this field, but I think that it's not a specific threat for our market.
Back to you, Mrs. Hillel. And in May's presentation, she mentioned the regulatory framework. Of course, the regulatory framework is critical for expanding formal financial services to millions of unbanked citizens. What has the Central Bank of Egypt been doing to promote financial inclusion, and what are some of the challenges that you faced in doing so?
I think May, in her presentation, has touched upon a lot of the challenges and what the central bank, how the central bank has been addressing these challenges. So I don't want to repeat a lot of what has been said. I will try to maybe touch on certain issues as challenges. For example, May mentioned data, and the minister was also mentioning data. So I think data is, for us as a central bank, a big challenge that we need to address, because it's not only for financial inclusion, it's just not only banking data, it's also data that we need to aggregate from other also providers of financial services to enhance financial inclusion. So this requires a lot of attention, requires a lot of coordination between a lot of stakeholders. For us also at the CBE, I think one of the challenges is that again, our regulatory framework has always been the traditional banking regulatory framework. So we have to be always sort of on our toes to be able to match the regulations and our advancement there with all the progress and innovation that's happening on that front, especially when it comes to digital financial services. So this is a challenge, and we are putting in the relevant departments. They are there, people have knowledge, but the pace is going to be very quick, so we have to be up to that pace as well.
The landscape is
it's changing
very
a lot,
rapidly.
and there is a lot of other solutions that if we as a regulator do not catch up with, that might pose a threat to financial stability. So we have to be really very quick, because the market doesn't wait. So we have to be on our toes there as well. On the supply side, I think we've touched upon the issue of outreach, and outreach is important. So the banking sector was allowed to have many branches just for serving small clients, but I think that we need to also harness the outreach of other entities, like Mrs. Mona was saying, in terms of the MFIs, agent bankings, postal office, but in a very orchestrated or organized way, so that we have a more coordinated framework in that respect. Literacy and awareness is definitely a challenge. It's not just a national strategy. I think also the outreach that we can reach through, in that respect, awareness and literacy, like, for example, the MOU that we signed yesterday with the National Women Council, will allow us to use for example, specifically for women, women that can talk to women, like get them aware so that the examples that we've seen today in the video can be multiplied. So again, on that front, coordination here is very important and awareness. Two, I think, other issues that are also very critical comes with affordability. I think affordability, we need to look at how we can make financial inclusion cost effective. How will we migrate from initiatives that may have some subsidies to initiatives that are more self-sustainable? And this is a challenge that I think as a regulator we also need to think about. Cost effectiveness is important. Anytime you offer a service that has a reduced cost or a waiver of costs, you will find there is a lot of demand on that. So we have to work on that balance. And I think maybe something that Mai did not also mention here is that we are working on regulations for no-frill accounts that will be very important for financial inclusion. I think that these are the main challenges that we are facing as a regulator, and we have to address in the near future.
Back to you, Minister Gheda, and you spoke earlier about the Takaful and Karama conditional cash transfer program, targeting 1.7 million poor households, out of which the vast majority are women. Social protection policies, including programs like Takaful and Karama, can and do contribute to tackling social exclusion. How can financial inclusion help achieve social protection and social inclusion?
Actually, social protection is about including those vulnerable, those poor, those marginalized in the different services in the country. You provide people with social protection when you provide them with education, with health services, but very important when you include them financially in the financial system. We have heard today about the size of the informal sector. We need people to be seen, to be visible, so that service providers can provide them with services. We have seen in the films, in the movies, when a woman loses her husband and doesn't have a regular stream of income, the lady called Gheda described how she felt. We are using financial inclusion in different ways, coupled with technology, so that we can provide this social protection. Providing women with a regular stream of income, of cash, where there is regularity of access to cash is very important for social protection. The ability to transfer money and to receive money in a safe and private way is very important to feel safe and protected. The ability to have access to credit. We are using those cash transfers as a guarantee for women to access credit, because those creditors know that these women have a regular access to cash monthly. So they have access to credit, they can create their own micro enterprises, they can create income for themselves and their families, they can employ and work, have self-employment, create self-employment, but they can also employ others to work for them. So this access to credit is very important for social protection. Access to payments is very important. Let me give you two very quick examples. In Nasser Development Bank, in the ministry that I'm in charge of, we provide monthly alimony to women. We are paying women monthly, those women who are divorced and do not have payments from their ex-husbands, we provide them with £500 a month. A woman used to pay £50 to come to the bank branch and get the alimony of £500, because this woman had to travel, stop working for a day, come to the bank, wait in long lines, and get her alimony paid at the beginning of every month. When we work on issues of financial inclusion, improve the infrastructure, and we have worked with NTRA and with the operators using the regulations that the bank and the ministry, the NTRA provided us with, we can provide the alimony instead of 54 branches, bank branches providing alimony to women. We can do that through 22,000 different outlets. 20,000 outlets of operators such as Fawry, and 2,700 outlets owned by the 3 mobile companies. So in fact, if we have those women on the system with their IDs, registered with the mobile operators, we can provide them with the monthly payment with minimum cost. Another example are those enjoying social insurance and pensions. We pay pensions to more than 6.5 million men and women in Egypt. Elderly who come to the different outlets of the Social Insurance Authority to get monthly payments. We have them now linked with their IDs on a database, they have smart cards, and we have an agreement with the private sector company who is our partner in this endeavor, eFinance, to provide them with a multitude of services, such as checking their balance, getting a new PIN number, changing and paying bills, you know, for telephone, for different gas bills, telephone bills, you know, electricity bills, other bills that they have to pay. So we are having them on the radar, as they said. And for those 6.5 million who get their pensions, and for those women, 1.7 million who get Takaful and Karama, and 1.2 million women who get the Daman social pension, all these have for the first time a smart card. They are on the system, they are on a unified database, and this makes them credit worthy. They are known to banks, they are known to NGOs, they are in and of themselves a client, they form a client base, and they can get different services. Having access to those services provides them with a sense of protection.
Some of them aren't even literate. But
you don't need to be literate. As you have heard, the penetration rate with mobile phones is extremely high. But even those telephones can be used for literacy programs. You can send voice messages. You can send text messages that a son or a daughter can read for you if you are an illiterate woman. But the fact of the matter is definitely access to finance is a right to each and every Egyptian. It's like access to education, it's like access to health, it's like access to infrastructure. So financial services should not just be for the rich and the educated. Financial services should be made available for each and every woman and man who have the right to access to financial services, who have the need to start their own project. We all have different financial needs, be it savings, be it insurance, be it leasing or micro-leasing, be it payments, be it transfers. These are services that everyone in our society should benefit. And I think with political commitment, with the right regulatory framework, with the right technology, we do have a big opportunity, and we do use them for social protection.
And how are you changing the mindset? You're reaching out to these people.
You don't really need to change it's surprising how people can adapt because of the needs, the different needs they have. It doesn't take a genius to understand that if I'm going to stop working for a day, if I have a small trade in the market, I need to leave my work for a day, go to the bank branch, stand in line, use public transportation, and go and get my alimony, for instance, to get the 500 pounds. If I get it on my phone, it's only going to cost me £5. So I will find a way to know how to use this technology. This is, you know, it's a matter of need and being street smart, having this need and really being able to use whatever is available to cope with poverty. Coping with poverty and coping with vulnerability makes people very innovative. So we really have to be innovative as well and provide the services in an innovative, affordable, simple manner where they are, in the villages, in the satellite villages, in the remote places, so that people come forward and use the services. So we have to make the services available, and it doesn't take much time for them to adapt.
Wonderful.
We have seen it in Kenya, we have heard about it in South Africa, and in many places where there are many challenges, be it infrastructure challenges or literacy challenges. Digital literacy is catching up very quickly. Women are smart, youth are smart, everybody uses those technology much faster than you can imagine.
With a huge impact on their lives. Mrs. Mona Zulfa, more than 20 years ago, you founded a microfinance institution serving women only. Why women only? So tell us about your experience with the development of the microfinance sector over the years, and what are some of the challenges that you faced as the chairperson of the National Microfinance Federation of Egypt.
Why women only? It's very clear. Women the unemployment rate in Egypt among women is 3 times as much as it is among men. Women constitute 62% of the total illiterate population. Poverty in Egypt, as it is in many parts of the world, has a woman's face. We have in Egypt up to close to 1/3 of the female-headed households, of the households are headed by females, and those households are the poorest of the poor. So it's very clear. You have to address the need that is unmet, and that is where your targeted population is suffering more. And so basically, I decided that this was the right way. Empowering women economically was the right way to promote social and economic development. Also, you have a lot of research proving that empowering women economically results in better health care for the children and less dropouts from school for the children of economically empowered women. So generally speaking, it's good for the economy, it's good for social development, and it restores justice to women. This is why the result has been amazing. In 20 years, we started with a very small donation of £230,000. Now, after 20 years and after the microfinance law and all those positive changes that took place during the last 3 years, this NGO, Al-Tadamun, has an outstanding portfolio of more than 200 million Egyptian pounds and has 110,000 active women borrowers. And thank God, we are proud that we are getting financing from banks and that our clients' default rate is 0, because women are responsible, women are serious. And they are reliable borrowers. So I mean, it's really something to inspire others to do that. And then we have 783 microfinance institutions, NGOs, that are lending to men and women. Actually, the total portfolio of 7.8 thousand and that are provided to 2.2 million as we speak, the current portfolio, we have 70% of the active borrowers are women. So even other NGOs are also inclined to satisfy the unmet needs of women, because they are the most of the targeted group that are suffering from financial exclusion. Now, those 70% of the active borrowers, the total active borrowers, are only receiving 50% of the portfolio. And this again sends another message: unequal distribution of loan amounts. You can explain it by the fact that women prefer group loans, because they are smaller amounts and they have this solidarity scheme. You can explain it by saying that women are more conservative. You can have a lot of explanations, but it still is a signal that, even with all the drive that we have to empower women economically, we still have unequal distribution. Now, this, the success of the microfinance institutions in Egypt during the last few years especially could not have happened without an enabling regulatory environment, without a supporting regulatory authority, without, the Central Bank of Egypt intervening to actually incentivize the banks and facilitate for the banks to fund the microfinance institutions, without now mobile banking and without continuing to support the industry in terms of, we have a lot of challenges to face. We have an enormous challenge on capacity building. We need, we have, our MFIs are large, medium, and small. The biggest number of our MFIs are in the small bracket that need to be trained, capacity building, their infrastructure, their systems, etc. And we have started a graduation program where we are cooperating with other partners and stakeholders to help small MFIs build the capacity and graduate to become medium MFIs, and medium MFIs to graduate to become large MFIs, with all what this requires and takes in terms of infrastructure, resources, and training. So this is a huge task that we still, a challenge that we need to address. We have the funding challenge, which I already talked about, and which we have sought the assistance and the intervention of the central bank, and now the difficulties and the obstacles have been to a great extent eliminated, and the funding is starting to flow from the banks to the MFIs. The real...
we're fast running out of time, so...
Okay. We have definitely a lot of challenges. Implementation of the mobile system is now my top priority on the list of challenges, so that we can get it through.
Back to you, Dante, and we've heard from the regulator and those on the demand side. Let's hear from the supply side. What are the challenges for the banking sector in trying to implement decisions related to access to finance?
Let me take from what I heard this morning again when was told about the way to encourage banks to do credit, and there was the potential customer were divided into willing and capable, not willing and not capable, or a mix of these. So this gives you the extent that we have to face a very complex situation. We are, since we are active in many fields, we have to face the problem to, let's say, get close to new-to-bank customer, convince them that there is a scope for them to become customer of a bank, and we have to deal with micro and medium and small enterprises, convincing them that it makes sense to borrow, to grow their business, and to make faster they grow. So is a quite a complex situation. Definitely, as before was also mentioned, the availability of data. I would say that for us, when we face the topic of lending, reliability on data is also extremely important, because definitely banking is an industry that has implied a lot of responsibilities, one of which is also the responsibility in properly manage the savings that we get. So apart the fact that we are highly regulated and we have a lot of regulation to respect, we need to be sure that what we lend in principle will be repaid. I agree that there is in Egypt a very good, let's say, level of good credit. The non-performing loans is a phenomenon that is contained. The attitude to repay that is very high, not only in the microfinance, but also across the industry. So for us, it's important anyway to get the comfort when we lend. We can develop we can develop systems in order to speed up operation. In the sense that, for example, as a bank, we launch a rule-based concession system for the micro enterprises, very small companies. So also here, technology is something that can help. The problem is, anyway, to gain the trust of the customer, to be able to talk the same language.
Of course, confidence is crucial. I'm afraid we've run out of time, so very quickly, Mrs. Hillel, I want to ask you, before I ask my final question, to regulate or not to regulate? In emerging markets, should the issue of financial inclusion be managed, or should a deregulatory approach be used with some guidance?
No, I think at the beginning, I'll speak about the Egyptian banking sector specifically. I mean, we have a very well-regulated sector, very strong, well-capitalized, really a robust banking sector, but at the same time, a sector that is only used to traditional products. The mindset, the capabilities, the capacity within the banks are more geared towards the very straightforward traditional corporate lending. On the demand side, we have also the challenge that I referred to, which is having an illiterate client, averse of going to the banking sector. So I think that the conviction at the central bank is that we need to at the beginning, be much more involved, have certain KPIs so that we can jumpstart the market. And then it's also up to the central bank to be able to put the proper regulatory environment in place, make the case that this is a win-win situation, and allow the banks after that to walk the path, and the central bank can step back.
All right, I think we've overstayed our welcome, so one quick word from each of the panelists, because they have a commitment to make, they have a pledge to make. Mona Zulfa'a.
We are looking forward to reaching 10 million borrowers within the next 6 years, hopefully to be cut down with the support of our partners and stakeholders to 4 years. And so we intend to cover the unmet needs of microfinance borrowers.
Minister Ghedaweli.
We will continue to work as a government, coordinate between different ministries, work closely with our central bank to reach the bottom 20% of the population with financial services.
Mr. Campioni.
I could say that we work hard to make our services accessible, valuable, reliable, and affordable. So to pledge the request that was done before.
And Mrs. Hillel?
My final word is to say that I think the dreams and aspirations of the rest of the panelists are quite, can be realized easily, and it is the conviction of the central bank and our commitment that as a coordinator we'll be there with all the stakeholders in the government to make these dreams come true.
On this optimistic note, I thank the panelists. Let's give them a hand. And many